Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of our colors, the national anthem, and our invocation.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Good afternoon. My name is Rudy Stevens. I serve in the 2nd of the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment as its chaplain down at Fort Bragg. Before I pray, I want to thank Chancellor Woodson, Mr. Benny Suggs, Lieutenant Colonel Radishak, and Dan Coucher for inviting me back home here to NC State to pray. As a 1998 graduate, I can say it's great to be back home, but I can say that even more so because this time last year I was in Jalalabad, Afghanistan. Now, if JBAD sounds a little bit familiar to you, it's because it served as a launch pad for that daring and successful mission that killed Osama bin Laden just a few months ago. During my year there, I prayed every day for our servicemen and women that they'd be safe. Believe it or not, I learned how to pray here at this bell tower. I lived in Gold Hall just a few blocks away, and would come over here and read that verse, Isaiah 2, and I would pray. Like many Wolfpacker, I prayed, God, help me pass this test. God, help me pass this class. God, help me graduate. And I told those students, those cadets just a second ago, is I'm proof that you can fail a class and still graduate if you pray. The demands here at NC State not only taught me how to pray, but they taught me that I could face any challenge that came my way. That's what we learn here as part of the pack. We can overcome adversity. That's a tradition NC State has long had since its founding in 1887. As a land-grant university, it sent generations into the military to serve our country. And these recent generations are no different. You see, from the class of 1992, we sent Eric Cranford. He was serving in the Navy and working in the Pentagon when our nation was attacked. On September 11th, 2001, he paid the ultimate sacrifice. He, along with others, are why we're here today. So to help us as we remember, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Almighty God, maker of heaven and earth, console us today. May our souls find comfort and peace as we think about what happened 10 years ago. It's a day that stands still, especially for those who lost loved ones. For Eric Cranford's family who are here with us, I pray that you be with them. Let them know that the NC State community will never forget Eric. For those of us who serve, it is his voice, Eric's voice, we hear in that Wolfpack chorus saying, "Don't give up. Don't ever give up." Now, in closing, Lord, I think of that verse written here on this bell tower from Isaiah 2. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. And Lord, until that verse is fulfilled and that day of peace arrives, keep the Wolfpack strong and true through adversity, especially our military men and women who defend us. I pray this in your holy name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Now retired Rear Admiral Finney South.
Thanks, Chandler. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. It's a day to be with family, and I'm heartened that you've chosen to be here with your NC State family. I came back to Raleigh a little more than a year ago, and it's times like this that show the importance of being home. Before I share some thoughts, I want to especially thank Dr. Tom Stafford, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and members of our planning committee whose preparations the past 2 months have allowed us to be here today. They were awesome. Thanks also to NC State's 4 ROTC programs. We want to thank the 333rd Fighter Squadron of the 4th Fighter Wing at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, the 82nd Airborne Division, and the North Carolina National Guard. Thanks also to Hillsborough Street merchants and community for supporting and attending today. After we conclude, we invite you to meet the first responders here today and spend some of your Sunday afternoon enjoying hospitality provided by our Hillsborough Street neighbors and merchants. As we gather 10 years later, September 11th is a day of deep reflection, national mourning and heavy sorrow. But let us not forget that it's also a day of appreciation and remembrance. It's fitting that we hold this service at the Alumni Memorial Bell Tower, the most identifiable landmark on our campus. Vice Chancellor Tom Stafford will open the door to the bell tower after the service for those who want to pay their respects. Inside, you'll find the names of 33 NC State alumni who lost their lives in World War I. Our alumni donated their hard-earned dollars to build a bell tower after World War I. It guaranteed they would be remembered by a history that sometimes forgets. But we're not going to let that happen here today. We cannot forget those who gave so much. At NC State, we join in that tradition of remembrance and to say thank you to those who have served our country and our community, not just on 9/11, but since the university's founding in 1887. We hold the highest gratitude for members of our NC State family who lost their lives that day and in the last 10 years serving our great nation. Those include men and women of the military and the first responder community and their families. Our indebtedness extends to Lieutenant Commander Eric Cranford, a 1992 alumnus killed on 9/11 when a hijacked plane plowed into the Pentagon, where he was working at Navy Command Center. He was a Navy pilot. We are joined by his family here today, and to honor Eric, a merit scholarship was established to provide financial assistance to an NC State student with academic potential and a commitment to public service. While that day brought great sorrow for Eric's loss, it also brought pride in another alumnus. John Kiera, a 2001 graduate Now, John was in an early morning company sales meeting on the 81st floor of the World Trade Center on September 11th. The first plane hit the building just 4 floors above him. As John and his office mates rushed down the stairs, he and his manager came across a distraught woman in a wheelchair on the 68th floor. The two men helped her into a special chair in the stairwell designed for emergencies and began an hour-long journey down as the building burned. Others helped along the way, but the two men never ever let go. They emerged from the building and put the woman in an emergency van. When they finally looked back at the building, they saw the inevitable and began to run. Several blocks later, the building collapsed. USA Today wrote of John's heroism, and the alumni magazine here at NC State reprinted a story for our NC State family to read. John's care for someone other than himself in a situation that triggered the highest level of self-preservation swells my heart with pride. NC State has built a reputation on service and sacrifice. The university has produced an impressive number of high-ranking officers, including a high number of admirals and generals. We have an outstanding ROTC program at NC State that trains officers for the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. We stress the value of serving others to our students. Campus efforts such as Shackathon and Service Raleigh shows a student body commitment to service. And countless alumni serve their communities individually on a daily basis and collectively through the Alumni Association's Wolfpack Service Day each year in October, the 15th this year. We thank all of you who give back to your country and your community. We sincerely appreciate your sacrifice. We know that your service makes us a stronger nation with a heart that is heavy today with sorrow for those who made the ultimate sacrifice. You make NC State proud. Go Pack!
Thank you, Benny. Now for Detective Charles Court.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to this memorial service. My name is Charles Corr, and I'm a detective with the NC State Police Department. On September 11th, 2001, I was a detective with the New York City Police Department. Like many others, I responded to the Twin Towers upon hearing of the initial plane crash. I arrived at the World Trade Center shortly after the second crash. The devastation events of that day remain with me forever. It's hard to believe that 10 years have passed. There are days when it seems like it was 10 minutes ago. Instead of focusing on the cowardly acts of those responsible, I focused on the tremendous acts I witnessed by the responders that day. I think of the hundreds of firefighters who responded, many of whom were off duty. When they entered the towers, they knew there was a good chance they weren't coming out, yet they still went in. In all, 343 firefighters died that day. I think of Police Officer John Perry. He was entering Police Plaza, literally about to file for retirement that morning. Upon hearing of the attacks, he ran to the World Trade Center. His work was not done. He had one more call to answer, a call for which he selflessly lost his life. John and 59 other police officers died that day. Upon my retirement, I worked in a high school as a school resource officer. I often spoke to classes about September 11th. I was amazed to find out that many of the students had already decided to join the military because of 9/11. I was inspired by their bravery and love of country. I came to work at NC State 5 years ago. Often very early in the morning, I would pass Miller Field and hear the hooting and hollering of people. I later found out that these individuals were our ROTC members. In my years here, I've learned much about how NC State has contributed to the war on terror. I have much respect for our young people who today are pounding the red clay of North Carolina but know in the future they may be pounding the sands of the Middle East. I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. This event means a lot to me and to those who responded that day. Thank you for not forgetting. Lastly, I ask you to please remember those who have died from or are suffering from illnesses related to 9/11. There are many, and they cannot be forgotten either. Thank you.
Detective Corps, thank you for being here, but more importantly, thank you for being there on 9/11. Now I ask Chancellor Randy Woodson to join us.
The events of September 11th, 2001 have touched lives and families all over the world, including Wolfpack Nation. We gather today not only to honor those killed or injured in the conflict, but also to look forward for hope of peace and safety. NC State works every day to deliver education and research in support of that very goal. We provide lightweight, heavy protective gear for firefighters who handle structural fires as well as those in the wild. We train law enforcement professionals through our Administrative Officers Program. This program has graduated more than 1,600 officers who represent more than 130 law enforcement agencies in 13 states and nations. NC State's Forensic Sciences Institute conducts research to advance the technologies needed to solve crimes and certifies law enforcement officers in crime scene processing. Our veterinary medicine students all participate in first responder training, benefiting both animals and humans. We work every day to educate the next generation of leaders who will handle catastrophic events like 9/11, or a tsunami in Japan, or various weather events like hurricanes at home and around the world. But without a doubt, what we're most proud of is our long tradition of educating future military leaders and returning veterans whose real-world experience enriches the classroom and enhances the educational experience for all of our students. Today, more than ever, NC State has a duty and indeed a responsibility to encourage and support a diverse campus community where in formal and in informal ways we're able to learn to trust and respect people from all cultures and all backgrounds. As much as we honor those who lost their lives, we honor the ideal of mutual understanding and respect. At this time, I would like to read a letter from General Hugh Shelton, a 1963 graduate of NC State, a long member of Benny Suggs Alumni Association, which is good because if he weren't, Benny would be on him. And, as you all know, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time of 9/11. General Shelton thought that he might not be able to join us today, but I'm incredibly honored and proud to say that he and his lovely wife, Carolyn, are here with us today, and we're so pleased that you were able to join us. Thank you. For those of us gathered here today, September 11th, and its still prevalent aftershocks are tragic. But one thing that I took from my time as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is the extraordinary leadership and service I saw on that day and in the months and years that have followed. The bell tower stands high as a symbol of NC State's commitment to those very principles. This university has consistently produced great leaders. It's simply what we do. We see them in our military, men and women leaving their families and homes to protect those great ideals inked in our Constitution. We see them in our unflinching first responders, police and fire emergency personnel who selflessly place immediacy and aid higher than their own personal safety or the risk that the next call may bring. To all of those men and women and to all of their families who represent the Wolfpack legacy of service, I offer my heartfelt thank you. Thank you. Two simple words, not said often enough. All of you have served, and the ones that have died in service are testaments to this university's great character. Your commitment and sacrifice are actions that show unequivocally what NC State stands for. We stand not on the sidelines, but on the front lines, bound by our own promise to ourselves and to make the world a better place to live. The words of General Hugh Shelton. Thank you so much. As we complete today's ceremony, I would ask the immediate family of Eric Cranford, the alumnus who lost his life on 9/11 at the Pentagon, to join me at the top of the stairs. Betsy, Eric's mother, Emily, his widow, and Brad, his brother, will assist Midshipman First Class Jeffrey Ryder and me in laying the wreath at the base of the Alumni Memorial Bell Tower in honor of all of those who have served this great country and this great community, but particularly those that have given their lives to protect all of us. Thank you. If you'll join me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. concludes our service. Thank you again for joining our NC State family on this day of remembrance.
NCSU September 11th Memorial, 10 years later. You'll never forget. God bless.